How did you know that God was calling you to plant a church?
We were in the community, been in ministry for over 20 years of my life. Kind of felt like God had planted us in that community and we were just going to raise our family there. God had different plans. And so we started praying, really felt confirmation while we were at Ark Launch Planners Conference that God was going to use us to plant a church in our community, which is crazy. It's a small community with tons of churches, not somewhere that I ever would have thought that we would plant.
Were you from Monroe originally?
Not at all. I grew up in San Antonio, Texas. Always thought I would live in a city. God just kind of planted us there about 11 years ago. We just built roots in the community, a lot of relationships in the community. What we discovered is that our ministry has really become a place where a lot of people who have been unchurched for a while or gone through church hurt have found a place to call home.
Okay, be honest. You're 2.5 years into this now. Is church planting what you thought it was going to be like?
We had no idea what we were doing.
Welcome to the ChurchCandy podcast. Today I'm sitting down with my friend, Pastor Rory Chance, who planted Genesis Church in Monroe, Louisiana. Pastor Rory, man, how's it going?
Man, it's going great. So excited to sit down with you.
Yeah, man, for sure. So you guys planted just 2 years ago, right?
Correct. April 30th was our 2-year birthday of planting Genesis Church.
Man, I just missed the birthday, so happy late birthday.
Yeah, it's been an exciting journey.
Yeah, man. So how did you know that God was calling you to plant a church?
So, we were in the community and had ended a previous ministry phase and just had, been in ministry for over 20 years of my life and just kind of felt like God had planted us in that community and we were just going to raise our family there. And God had different plans. And so we started praying. God started speaking to us. And so we went to Ark Launch as just like a fleece before God, like we're just going to test the waters and see, and just really felt confirmation while we were at the Ark Launch Planners Conference that God was going to use us to plant a church in our community, which is crazy because it's a small community with tons of churches and not somewhere that I ever would have thought that we would plant. But when God's in it, you just have to say yes.
Yeah. So were you from Monroe originally? Like, is that your hometown or you were just always there?
No. So it's actually my dad's hometown.
Okay.
And so I have a lot of family in the area.
So it's not quite like a Jesus going back to Nazareth.
Exactly.
Situation.
Not at all. In fact, I grew up in San Antonio, Texas. Always thought I would live in a city. And so we're in small town, Duck Dynasty country.
Yeah.
And so, God kind of put us up. Yeah, absolutely. And so God just kind of planted us there about 11 years ago, and we just built roots in the community, a lot of relationships in the community. And what we discovered is that while there's a lot of churches there's a lot of not so much unchurched, but de-churched people.
Yeah.
And so our ministry has really become a place where a lot of people who have been unchurched for a while or gone through church hurt have found a place to call home. And so it's been really unique because that's kind of a season that we came out of. And so God has just kind of used that season of struggle as fertilizer for the fruit that we're seeing now.
That's huge, man. That's huge. So you felt like God might be calling you to plant a church. You go to the Ark Launch training. You get confirmation from the Lord. All right, God, this is next for us. What did those early days look like when you're in Monroe, needed to build your launch team? What were the early days like?
But really quick, before we jump into that, pastors, I'm going to ask you a question. Can your church handle more new guests? If that answer is yes, then I want to tell you about ChurchCandy. See, at ChurchCandy, we help churches get more new guests on Sundays by running their Facebook and Instagram ads, inviting their city to church. We are on a mission to connect 1 million people to a local church, and so far, we have already connected over 250,000 people to churches all across the country, and we would love to send people to your church as well. Imagine all the people that drive by your church every single day that want to grow in their relationship with the Lord, that want to be plugged into a life-giving church community, but they have no idea that your church exists. We want to get them connected to your ministry. So go to churchcandy.com or hit the link below in the description. I'll also pin it in the very first comment so you can schedule a call with the ChurchCandy team, learn more, and see if we would be a good fit to work together. Now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, so we right in the early moments, it was a lot of going through the Arc Launch book page by page and saying, are we doing it right? And so I have a few friends that connected me with some good people to talk to, some good mentors. We didn't end up going through Arc, but a lot of friends who've planted churches successfully. Pastor Michael Scobie, Pastor Wayne Francis, people that I've just known throughout my life, and just kind of became a voice to our life. And so they advised that we need to find some way to start building our team. And so actually I went to a Make Room conference that Life Church Memphis put on.
Yeah.
And I overheard somebody talking about social media ads. And I was like, we need that. Like, well, I don't know what I got to do to get into it, but and I didn't have any idea at that point that it was ChurchCandy. And so I think I pulled them aside later. And I said, hey, what was that you were talking about? And so that's actually how we got turned on to ChurchCandy, just through an overheard conversation. And so we started building our launch team doing coffee ads. And so met some great people, some weird people too.
Yeah.
But really had some phenomenal results come out of that. And so over about a 6 to 7 month period, we started building our launch team and started meeting in a little bitty room. We got to where the room had 50 people, and it was so small and it was so crowded that, we would have like a short worship service before we did our launch training. And we always like to joke that you could smell what the singers ate for breakfast.
Oh my gosh.
Because we're standing so close to each other. And so God just filled that room up in preparing us for launch, and in large part due to our Instagram and Facebook ads.
That's huge, man. So I want to talk more about those coffee meetings. What I love about what you guys did to build your church is you spent money on ads on Instagram and Facebook, just inviting people to grab coffee. It's like, hey, you have questions about God? Sure. We're planting a new church. Would love to sit down with you. And what's awesome about that, especially in a city where you guys were, there's not like a lack of churches. There's a lot of churches there. But you said something really cool that stood out to me is there's a lot of de-churched people. Yeah. And so I would imagine, did you guys run into like a lot of people that maybe had some church hurt previously, or maybe they like, man, I've never had an opportunity to where a pastor was accessible and would like make time for me like that. What was your experience like?
Absolutely. So I want to say during that 6 month period, we probably around 20 different coffee meetings happen. And so a lot of times we wouldn't really have people show up to the coffee meetings, but then they would come to our Sunday launch team. So we would tell them in the ads, I think, that we had launch team meetings on Sundays. But the ones that I did, man, like it was, there was actually a guy who was like a guitar tuner, like a guitar guy for Chris Tomlin.
Wow.
That lived in town. And he's like, I'd never seen a pastor just advertise to sit down and talk with people. And so we had about a 2-3 hour conversation at a coffee shop. Has become just an ally to our church, a great friend of the church. And then, just people who had questions that want to sit down and just figure out how do I move forward? I've not been in church, and what's the next step that I need to take? So really turned into some spiritual conversations, and it wasn't always just like a pitch to people, hey, come join our church. Yeah. And, I would say about half of those that we sat down with did end up coming along. But there were a lot who didn't, but we still built great relationships with them. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of lessons in that. The biggest thing that I want to point out to people listening is you guys were running ads. You essentially, in like the business world, you'd call that lead generation. Like you found people that were interested, and not all of them that filled out a form saying they wanted to grab coffee ended up going to grab coffee.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But you didn't just stop there. You're like, hey, we got connected with these people.
Yeah.
What can we point them to next?
Absolutely.
And so you said you guys got connected with people that, they said they're interested in coffee. Mm-hmm. We ended up not getting coffee, but they did come to one of our interest meetings, and we still got connected with them that way. That's one thing, like a lot of churches we work with, is they'll spend all this money on ads and they'll get all these names and it'll just sit in a database.
Yeah.
Man, and it breaks my heart. Because number one, that's poor stewardship.
No doubt.
Right?
No
because
doubt.
we always talk about stewardship as money. But no, God is steward. He wants you to steward the people in your church that he's blessed you with, whether they've showed up or not. And so when people say online that they're interested, they plan a visit, or they say they're interested in grabbing coffee, if you don't follow up with them, you don't connect with them,
no doubt,
you're missing out.
Absolutely. Right? And that's been a big honestly, it's become a conversation piece in our leadership conversations, meetings constantly, is that we get everybody for a season. That season may be, you know, just a moment on their feed. It may be a visit on a Sunday. It may be 1 month. It may be 6 months. It may be 6 years. And so what we've kind of learned through this process is that we have to steward whatever season that is well. And so if we only have the opportunity to connect through a follow-up text to a plan your visit ad, we're going to steward that well. If we have the opportunity to have them come to our church service, we're going to make sure that we have a worship experience. We're going to steward that well. We're going to give them next steps to get involved in our church, to walk further into discipleship. And so like that's been such a huge part of our growth, because I think a lot of times in my history in ministry, we're just waiting on people to show up and then hoping something catches. And so it really changed our mentality to make us a more proactive church, to say, God's given us an opportunity, even if it's one that we don't see, it's out there, just an impression on their feed. We want to use it for the glory of God. And I think the more that we steward well, the more people God sends. And so there's a spiritual principle there that's kind of been uncovered for us. It's really helped us to grow.
That's huge, man.
Yeah.
Can you think of any testimonies of people that found your church from an Instagram ad or a Facebook ad?
Yes.
Got connected to Genesis, and God's just done some really cool things in their life?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's multiple. I'll say this. I'll just throw this in and then give you a good example. It's weird because a lot of people, we do the plan your visit ads, and a lot of times people plan their visit and then they don't show up, or they don't show up for 2 or 3 weeks, or they never show up. But we've actually had more visitors come to our church that didn't plan a visit and stick and stay. And so when we were still in team building phase, there was like 20 of us, and this dude rolls up on a motorcycle with a helmet on. Like, we're in this little bitty storefront, like right on the street. He parks right in front, gets out, takes off his helmet, walks in. And he's a guy who hasn't been in church in 20 some odd years, about my age, so since his early 20s. And his name is Boone. And Boone came in, everybody greeted him. He likes to joke that everybody in the whole church said hello, kind of overwhelmed him. But Boone had been through a divorce. He had been through a motorcycle wreck, had been through some stuff, saw our ads, came just randomly. He's an introvert, just came to our church, connected with some people. He's now over all of our media, our cameras. God's just radically changed his life. He's a veteran that had some PTSD, and like just made some connections and is ministering to other guys that have gone through the same thing. And so you just never know who's going to roll up from those ads. And like that's probably one of 30 or 40 different stories that just comes to mind, because like I'll say this is in a small community, and I'm sure you have a lot of pastors wondering, will this work in a small community? Our area is about 100,000 people MSA, maybe 150. And so because we run ads, and we're one of the only churches that run ads, we're often one of the first churches that people visit in our area. So as a church plant, that's invaluable. So it's why we continue to stay true to ChurchCandy, because we just know it's a strategy that gives us an opportunity to minister to people. And so it's been an incredible part. It's from the very breadth of our church before we were even launched. It's been such a big part of our strategy.
That's huge, man.
Yeah.
Okay, be honest. You're 2.5 years into this now. Yeah. Is church planting what you thought it was going to be like?
No, yes and no. So we had planted before in Flagstaff, Arizona. My wife and I, 2 children, and we had no idea what we were doing. And so in a sense of, it was not what we expected, because it's been better than we expected. So you hear a lot of, man, church planting is the hardest thing in the world. And it does cost a lot. But I think when you approach it the right way, when you have the right systems in place and the right people around you, it doesn't seem like an impossible task. And the faith of the people that were in that 20-person room that are now in a 220-person room, it is so much larger, and people have grown. And so it was super hard to do alone. Impossible, I would say, to do alone, to really reach a community and to become a church that's fruitful. But it's been the honor of a lifetime to see a fruitful season of ministry that we've seen, because it was 20 years of failing at a lot And then the last, 3 years of seeing God do something that is just beyond our expectations.
Yeah. One thing that you said that I think every church planter needs to know is that whenever you felt God calling you to plant a church, you didn't just go and start trying to do it.
That's right.
What did you do is you went to people that had done it before.
Correct. Yeah.
You went and you were seeking wisdom from people that had done it before. I do the same thing in our business.
Sure.
Right? Whenever I wanted to start our business, I looked at people that had gone before us and done similar things. It's like, what can I learn from them? And so what other advice would you give to a church planter that is in the very early stages, or maybe God feels like they feel like God's calling them to plant a church?
Yeah, I think a big thing is learn from people who know what they're doing. Is like, fruit speaks loudest. And so sometimes the leaders that you really need their voices in your life, you have to pursue them. They're not going to come to you and tell you how to do it. And so we started seeking out advice, seeking out wisdom, and take your time. I know, for us, we were kind of pushed into meeting before we were ready to meet because we had a team and we had to do something with them. But we slowed down and took our time to really develop our culture, to build our team. And there's something different about having a room of 50 people that see themselves as a team that's going to do something than a room of 50 people that think this is the church. And so for us, just that strategy of building before we built has changed the whole trajectory of our church and the culture of our church long term.
Absolutely, Matt. I love it. So if you could go back in time, were there any like big mistakes that you guys made that like you almost want to warn other people of, or like, oh man, I wish we would have done this differently?
Yes, absolutely. I think the biggest mistake we made is placing leaders out of desperation. And so rather than sticking true to our culture and really developing people, early on, we needed somebody. So like, hey,
we need someone in kids.
It's a warm body.
You got a pulse and then you pass the background check. Get in there, bud.
Exactly. And so we dropped some people in some places. And so like only being a couple years in, we've had to overcome that even more recently. And we've outgrown some of those issues. But like, I would say that's my warning, take heed all who travel therein. And so it's definitely worth waiting and developing and training and talking through values and culture and having deeper conversations rather than just throwing a warm body in the game.
Yeah. Tactically, let's talk about like your building, like in your locations.
Yeah.
A lot of church plants, they'll meet in a school, they'll do movie theater, they'll find like a community center. What was that like for you guys? What was the journey of finding your meeting spot?
So we were actually ready to launch after a few months. Team-wise, like we had a large enough team, we had the finances, we could find a building. And so it was a little bit of a long search. We ended up launching out of an event center. So we were mobile for about a year. And it was a great thing. We had to dial in our systems, week in and week out, but we were tremendously blessed that we were able to keep all of our equipment on site because it was an event center. And so they had some space for us there. And so we did that for about a year before we were able to, like, God just dropped a place in our lap that's about a 12,000 square foot building. And so our team went in and we did a lot of the work ourselves, remodeling, painting, flooring, all of the things. And so, where we're at, it's a lot different than most places. Our rent is, if I say how much we paid, all the guys in big cities would just, they would swipe away.
You're gonna get people that are jealous.
Yeah. And so we don't want to incur any jealousy, but like God really just blessed our church to have a permanent location. And since then we've grown, we've doubled since we got into a permanent location. And so if I would say anything to pastors that are in that mobile phase is like, there was a sermon that a friend sent me by Tommy Barnett that says, "Lord, surprise me." Is God actually shut down several places that we were trying to get into and they didn't work out. And actually the owner of one of the buildings that didn't work out just kind of caught a heart for us and was a part owner of this building that we're a part of now. And so he actually negotiated the inexpensive rent on our behalf at a location that was double the size. And so we spent about 9 months frustrated trying to get into this other building. And in church planning, when things fall apart, it's because they're supposed to. And so as long as you're doing what God's called you to do, being obedient, like it'll come together. And so there were a lot of Sundays where we were setting up and tearing down, and I was telling that team it won't always be this way. Like God's going to give us a building, God's going to give us a place, and man, what it does for your team when they come out of that phase into a place is just incredible. So just trust God with the struggle season, because it was tough, even for that 1 year.
Yeah. I was sitting down grabbing coffee with Pastor Dino Rizzo from the executive director of ARC recently. And one of the things I asked him was like, okay, post COVID, what are some of the biggest changes you guys have seen in like church planting and things that church planters need to do? And that's what he told me was these portable guys need to find a permanent building way quicker than used to, because they've just seen once you transition from portable to a more permanent spot, even if it's a storefront at a strip mall, you just see so much growth.
Absolutely.
From attendance and giving, because you're rooted.
That's right. Yeah. And you're just able to do ministry and discipleship on a whole different level.
You can meet Wednesday nights.
That's
you can,
right.
Especially in Houston, that's not as popular as like I grew up in Beaumont.
Sure.
And so like we would do Wednesday night services, and we would do in here. It's like people are busy. Like I driving across town Wednesday night at 6 p.m. I can't commit to that every week, right?
Sure.
So I would imagine a place like Monroe, it's probably a lot more common to do like Wednesday night worship nights or a Bible study pretty frequently.
Yeah. So we use our building pretty much every night of the week for small groups, for different discipleship classes. And we try to get away from like just a Sunday, Wednesday mentality, because we're in the Bible Belt. We're trying to, develop more of a lifestyle of discipleship. But like that building has been invaluable. We use our lobby for all sorts of different meetings throughout the week. And so, I mean, it's just been a massive blessing that a building that seemed too big for us a year ago now seems a little bit too small. And so like that's only God,
That's huge, man. That's huge. Well, Pastor Rory, I love it. I'm so honored for our friendship, our partnership together.
Absolutely.
If someone wanted to reach out and connect, maybe a future church planter, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
So Facebook, Instagram, Rory Chance. Our church is genesischurch.la. And so I'm open, and hit me up. Add me on all right. Those. Yeah.
All right. We'll link it down below. Pastor Rory, appreciate you, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Yeah.